And that's where you learn that you can be better than the camera. Either you shoot in automatic mode. What do we mean by that? You go to the top of the camera. So you're starting new with photography. What do you need to think about? So when you're buying a camera, you can use the camera's information to make you a better photographer. Okay, watch this. Selfie with a DSLR. When has anybody ever done that? If I was looking at starting today, so right now there's a graph on screen. If I do display, if I zoom into the photo, see that it's blurry, it's not sharp. So actually the auto mode in the camera isn't always right. If I was taking the photo, I would have look there we go. That's just a photo I took of myself. You can use the automatic mode in the camera. Some cameras have a better automatic mode than others, as in they're designed for new beginner photographers. So you might find some cameras are quite intense. There's a lot of things on them. Let's have a look at these. So right now, if I was to take a photo on this camera, I would have to turn the camera on. And once I turn the camera on, it asks me, what do you want to do? And there's loads of settings on that screen. So we don't want you to get confused with settings on cameras. If you're looking at taking photos, you're looking to get a budget camera, you know what? You need to learn a few things. Either you shoot in automatic mode. What do we mean by that? You go to the top of the camera and you'll see here, you can just flip it over to this nice little green box on a Canon, and they call it the full auto mode. So fully automatic. It handles everything for you. Should I do a quick little photo? Can I do a photo? This will be a challenge. Let's see if I can take a photo of myself in auto mode, because that will basically mean that I was too zoomed in. Let me zoom out. We'll do that again. Give me a second. Okay, so now let me bring you up on the right screen. Okay, watch this. Selfie with a DSLR. When has anybody ever done that? And zoom in, and let me bring you to my screen so I can show you this. Here we go. There's the photo. So in automatic mode on these Canon cameras, it's quite good because you can basically just use the camera. Look there we go. That's just a photo I took of myself. What did the camera decide to do? It looked at everything in my photo and it made a decision for me. It basically said what photo is good for this environment, what ISO, what shutter speed, and it decided for me. So looking at this, it's 1/20th of a second, which is a slow shutter speed. If I was shooting myself, I wouldn't use such a slow shutter speed. A slow shutter speed will mean when you're moving the camera about, then it will be more likely to be blurry if there's quite a lot of movement. It shows a 2.8 aperture, which is good because this lens is a Canon professional series lens. So you can shoot at lower apertures, which means it lets in more light, which makes the photo a lot nicer. Apart from that, the ISO was an auto. And let's have a look at the ISO. It shows ISO 200. But that is because right now where I am, it's quite well lit. I've got loads of lights on here. So actually you made a good decision there. But if I was taking the photo, I would have increased the shutter speed and increased the ISO. That way it just foolproofs the photo. You won't get any... let me show you an example. Let me take a photo again. Bring you back up here. And let's take a photo, but I'll move the camera at the same time. So I moved it. Well, let's see what happens. Okay, so now you can see what I mean by that. It chose to take the photo still in the same setting as before. But if I zoom into the photo, see that it's blurry. It's not sharp. So actually the auto mode in the camera isn't always right. And that's where you learn that you can be better than the camera. Because that still shows to shoot at 1/20th of a second at 2.8. But if I change these settings to fully manual, which is what the M stands for, and I decide I want to shoot at a different setting, which I'll put in here. It might be a bit bright. I'm doing all this as a selfie, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let's do that again and see if my settings are better. So I'll move the camera again, and let's have a look at that. Now you see I was wiggling the camera there. So let's go back to there. Now the photo I took is just there. So even though I was wiggling the camera, if I zoom in, see it's still sharp, whereas the camera's automatic mode did that. So see how much blur there is? So that is kind of giving you an idea of the automatic mode and why it's not always, let me just zoom you out here, why it's not always good to shoot automatic. But if you're new to photography and you're taking on new projects or you're thinking about getting into it, don't let that discourage you. Basically, shoot in full auto, you'll find out where the limitations are, and then you can get better. The graph on the picture 4. Okay, so Trip 10's good question. Let me give you a bit more information about that. So when you're buying a camera, you can use the camera's information to make you a better photographer, like you could say. So let's have a look at the graph behind the camera, because this would be a good beginner kind of series. Let me zoom you in again. Okay, so when I took the photo, and based on this here, we have got a few things we can look at. Press play. We'll bring up that picture I took again. So right now, there's a graph on screen. If I do display, there is a display option. Okay, on each camera, these are slightly different info. It's called info on this one. So you can select info and see that graph changes. That's the photo. That's the photo with the graph. That's the photo with the RGB. How much red is in the photo, how much green is in the photo, how much blue is in the photo. That graph, let me bring that graph up. So that graph is actually showing us where your photo is. Technically, if your graph in your photo is in the center, so you got like a nice bump in the center, like a little hill, that's saying you've got enough darks and brights in your photo. If everything's really pushed up against one side, it means you're too dark. If it's pushed up on the other side, you're too bright. So that is a good gauge. I normally look at that a lot, because then I can see if my camera, the photo's blown out or not. So if I give you one more example of that, let me take a dark photo. Because it's so dark and the lens is in automatic, I won't take it. Okay, there. So now I took a photo of my desk. Now see that graph? The graph is all pinched up against this end because it's really dark. If I go back to the other photo, see that graph now? It's a dark graph. But now let's do the opposite. Let's go really bright. I'm going to put the ISO really high and take a really high photo. Oh, that actually exposed quite well. Let me make that so it's really bright. Oh, that would be there. Okay, yeah. I just took a picture of my light. Okay, now, so look at that graph. See, it's all bunched up against the right because everything is too bright. You don't want it too bright. You don't want it too dark. You want it just right. Even that photo, I could have made it a bit better. Let me get you a proper nice photo, just so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. As in, when I say nice, I mean exposed correctly. So if I do 800, what can I take a photo of? Let's take a photo of my keyboard. It's not the best photo, but as an example, it'll work. So what we're doing here is we're showing you different examples of cameras, DSLR cameras, how to read them if you're a beginner. Also looking at different camera options to get you started. So look at that camera, look at that photo. I should have connected my camera into my computer. You could have seen this live. So now you can see there, that is not a bad shot. It's got pretty decent, but some of it's blurry because I'm at 2.8 aperture. So let's go into the info and look at the graph on this one. I'm zoomed in. When I'm zoomed in, you can't do the info. So let's zoom out. There. And we got info. So still it's saying it's dark, but it isn't technically dark. It's because we're taking a picture of something which is a darker color. So it's always going to have more darks in that photo. So in this example, see there's more black than there is white. So then that will always insinuate that it's dark. So it's not always 100%, but that graph is handy. Yeah, I normally use one. I normally use one for opening action cameras. So that's why I've got that. Because you'll notice in action cameras, there is no way to take off the battery flap without having longer options available. So I'm hoping that helps you as part of a starter series of photography.